Welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijoma. And right before I get into our conversation this week, if you would like to support the podcast, you can go to convome.com/support, and there you'll be able to buy me a coffee, and all that funding goes to keeping up with production for the podcast. And I thank you in advance. And now on to the episode. My guest this week is Cecilia Leibovitz, and she runs the brand Cecilia Leibovitz. She has an Etsy shop by that name, as well as a website, cecilialeibovitz.com, which of course I will link to in the show notes for this episode. Ceci is a jewelry designer and a published author as well. And she's also a health coach. So we have so much to talk about, and I'm excited to get into it. Ceci, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure, Ijama. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
I am too, because I know that we connected on Instagram, and I think we chatted on and off and have done, a little bit here and there over the years. And
Yes.
so to talk with you almost feels like I'm having a conversation with someone I know but don't know.
Mhm. Same here. I feel the same way.
Yes. So let's start with, how do you, I mentioned three things that you're doing, but how do you see yourself when it comes to the work that you do for a living, which is multiple things? How would you describe yourself?
I guess, I feel like the word entrepreneur is kind of overused, but it seems to fit well for me.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a little kid, I'd say about 15 years old, I've been really interested in doing things, sort of taking things that I am interested in, taking things that I have a passion for, and weaving them into something that other people may enjoy. Um, I look at everything as sort of an art, and what can I create from something that I have a passion for.
Yeah. What was the first craft that you put your hand to?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to make paper dolls. I really liked paper dolls, and I think I had been given a set of paper dolls as a gift once, and got really inspired to make little clothes that I would draw
Yeah.
and make these little tabs on them so I could put them on these little dolls that I would draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I was in high school, for most of my schooling until the last 2 years of high school, I actually wasn't the best student. I was fantastic at English and literature, writing, and all that, but other things like math and science, I didn't do so well at, and I was kind of bored by those. And in high school, I was lucky to have a really great art program. This was in Rockaway Beach in New York City. I went to Beach Channel High School, and I was an art major for, I guess, most of the, after my freshman year, most of the rest of my high school career.
Mhm.
I was an art major, and I started painting and using pastels and drawing and doing even a little bit of sculpture. And I was able to be a apprentice at St. John the Divine Cathedral
Wow.
with an artist, Greg Wyatt, who was the sculptor in residence, and he created this really pretty magnificent fountain in the back or somewhere by the cathedral, and all kinds of very large sculptures. And so that was a very hands-on and very great experience to do little sculptures and learn from him.
So how did you segue into what you do now, on the crafting side?
Mm-hmm. So that was an interest, if sort of a real evolution from something that was very different at first.
Mm-hmm.
I had been looking at all kinds of craft books, wanting to learn more. I had represented artists. I had a business called Craftsberry Kids, which opened up around the same time as Etsy in 2004,
Hmm.
and representing all these really fantastic crafters and artists who made things for children. And some things happened. I won't get into all the details, but around a law, um, called the CPSIA. It had to do with lead in products for children.
Oh, yes.
Remember
Hmm.
that?
I do.
Yeah, so I became very involved actually with this, with an organization called the Handmade Toy Alliance. And uh, during that time, I was losing many artists because there was so much sort of confusion and issues with whether people would be able to stay in business or not.
Mm.
And that all sort of got resolved, and I became very involved in that too. But in the meantime, I wound up letting go of that business, and realizing I wanted to create something myself, rather than just represent, which was fantastic to represent other artists, but I decided I wanted to do something myself, which is
Mm.
creative,
Mhm.
in craft or art form. And I wound up taking classes at night at Fashion Institute of Technology, learning to make hats. It was a millinery program,
Hmm.
using felt and traditional hats, kind of like the old style
Yeah.
fedoras and like bridal pieces and things like that. And
Wow.
it was really great. It was such a great experience.
That
I
is
loved it.
fascinating.
So much history behind it too. And I was really inspired by time periods like the 1920s, and it's really fun.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought I would, and I did. I started a hat business, and it was an Etsy shop I started. I didn't know very much about the marketing end of it, and so it was a little bit of a struggle. I also um, found that I really liked things like embroidery, beadwork, and really small details.
Mhm.
And so at first, I transitioned into, from the hats, I transitioned into selling antique and vintage lace on my Etsy shop,
Okay.
because I realized the hats, it was hard for me. I don't think I even sold one hat on Etsy. I had done a craft, like not a craft show, but a show at an art gallery with the hats.
Mhm.
And I did do well there. And, it was in person, and people liked the hats, and I sold some, but it was going to be a struggle. So I
Yeah.
was transitioning into selling supplies, and I had a very large amount of really beautiful antique lace, and was learning the history of it. I also had some really beautiful old buttons, like pretty rare ones, some of them. And that did well actually on Etsy. It's interesting because I used the same shop. I don't think I changed the name. I think it was always Cecilia Leibovitz, if I recall. Um, and so at first it was hats, then it was the supplies. And then I don't even know what brought me to this, but I just started making these little miniature sort of buttons. I know what it was. I had found a great button book, um, and was learning. It's kind of in the British tradition of doing fabric buttons. So I was
Yeah.
learning techniques. Yeah, and I really loved that. And it was sort of similar. Like I actually even was using certain techniques that were similar to what I had done with the millinery. And one day I just decided, oh, why don't I try to make some jewelry, make necklaces that are sort of made with a button, but then using actual like jewelry components to kind of
Mhm.
incorporate the little textile designs into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe what you sell today?
Hmm. So that was interesting too. It didn't start out this way. I mean, I was doing some of these pieces that I sell today, but it was also lots of embroidered pieces in the
Yeah.
beginning. Today, it's actually custom work for the most part, um, for brides or people who have lost a loved one. I do mostly do things for brides. So it's either somebody who's going to be married and would like a piece of either their wedding dress or perhaps their mother's wedding dress.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes they want to wear a little necklace or earrings or bracelet for their own wedding, or they might get it as a keepsake for after the wedding. And then often they're given as gifts, to maybe the maid of honor or a sister or mother, and they're very meaningful, very sentimental pieces, and
Yeah.
pretty simple as well. I do have more complex designs too, but what sells the best and what I'm mostly working on are the keepsake pieces.
Yeah.
Then the other pieces, and these keepsake pieces are mostly sort of ivory and traditional white and ivory wedding colors
Yeah.
for the most part. And then the other pieces I like to make sometimes are using those old vintage or um, antique fabrics, and sometimes beads, like very old French beads, things like that. I'll search out, and I have a pretty large collection of these materials.
Mhm.
and even like artisan things. I like to use materials that are hand dyed, and I actually used to do a lot of that on myself, on my own, dyeing fabrics and everything's. My preference is to work with natural fibers like silk and lace and things like that.
Hmm.
So, but as I said, though, the main work that I have on my Etsy shop is the custom pieces.
Yeah. Did you find that it was easy or easier to create custom pieces for people, and was it easy for the market to find you and realize that what you were making were actually custom pieces and not, you weren't just creating jewelry and then selling them off? I don't know. I
Mm.
maybe I didn't phrase that correctly, but does that make sense what I'm asking?
Oh yeah, it absolutely
Okay.
totally makes sense. Yeah, and it was really easy. It was I really enjoyed doing the more intricate, like the embroidery and stuff. But I
Hmm.
also realized it took a long time, and at the same time, and I didn't want to charge outrageous price. For the amount of time I was taking, it seemed like the prices were maybe going to be getting a little too high for
Right.
embroidered pieces. And I was just getting more and more requests from people who wanted custom pieces and just
Mm.
loved the idea of incorporating a family fabric, a
Yeah.
bridal fabric. And it came to the point where I was like, okay, this is obviously sort of like it found me. I didn't decide I only
Yes.
want to do this, but yeah, that's what it just came to me. And it was more and more demand for it. And people just, um, all kinds of people want it. I've gotten requests for other types of fabrics also, like uh, one person had a piece of a costume from a old, I think like a 1950s actor had worn a suit, and she
Hmm.
was a fan of this guy and sent me a piece of fabric, and that was super fun. So all kinds of neat things like that.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
do you find, or do you feel that you get a lot of customers from word of mouth when, someone has worked with you and then they send someone your way because they know what you are able to do?
Yes, yeah, sometimes people will give a gift at a wedding to a family member, or they may wear one of my pieces at a wedding, and then other people at the wedding will ask about the necklace or the earrings or whatever type of jewelry. And yeah, I will get orders from other people who
Yeah.
have been referred. Hmm.
I like that. Um in and this is I'm going to go off a bit. This What you're doing reminds me so much of early Etsy days
Mm.
when it was very heavily handmade or vintage, um, items that you saw on the platform. Not to say there's anything wrong with it now, but I feel like now, you hear a lot more about, the print on demand and the printables, which isn't bad, but, um, what you're selling reminds me so much of Etsy back in the day when it was, I don't want to say a smaller platform, but quieter platform.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember those days, and they were really fun.
they were.
Yeah, I love that, and that's what drew me to Etsy. It was so exciting to find the most incredible, most unique items on there, and they still exist. But like you're
Yes.
saying, yeah, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
other things on there now, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Now you have to dig a bit more to find
Hmm.
them, but they're there. And it's reassuring to know that, um doing what you're doing, which is highly customized, there's still a solid place for you on this platform, because I know some people get worried that, certain types of artisans are, no longer able to thrive on Etsy. But I
Hmm.
think what you're doing is encouraging to see and hear about, that, you still can. You just have to stick it out.
Yes, yeah, and I find that actually, I've thought about other platforms. Like I know, what was it, like Amazon Handmade came around, and
Yeah.
I have no idea how it's going now, but I remember thinking like, oh, should I be on this? And I actually just, Etsy's the only craft marketplace that I'm on, but I remember worrying about, I know that with Etsy, even at this point, even though it's grown so much, everyone's always been so understanding, and they've actually sort of seemed to welcome the custom aspect of my work and understand completely that if they're going to get something quality and lasting, that it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And that was one of the worries I had, like, if I did, because I did consider the Amazon handmade, but I thought, I don't know if people would really understand it like they do on Etsy. And I have had a couple of clients over the years who maybe didn't understand as much, or they thought, I'm just going to get this in like 2 days because it's our anniversary. And that's another thing, people buy these pieces for anniversaries too.
Yeah.
Because they're like, the 13th anniversary is traditionally, I guess in the United States anyway, I think, a lace anniversary. So people will get those. And but for the most part, people understand. Even the anniversary people, they'll realize like, okay, I have to order in advance because this is custom made.
Yeah. So you also sell on your own website, cecileibovitz.com. How do you balance running an Etsy shop and also your website? Because I know running a website it takes a different mindset, because you now also have to worry about SEO and a back end and what have you that goes into running a website. Or do you have a webmaster that does all that for you?
So I do run my website all on my own. I did have a developer and who also did some design, kind of put it together in the beginning. It's a Shopify website.
Okay.
The way that things turn out for me is that Etsy is so much more streamlined, or at this point, I've been doing it for a while, and the orders, I did spend a lot of time marketing Etsy in the beginning more. And now, even if I don't have as much time, the orders are still coming in consistently from Etsy.
Yeah.
Because of the way I set things up and made sure I had the good photos, and there's some listings that are bestsellers. With Shopify, with my outside website, which I use the Shopify platform for, there's a lot more work. I actually had signed up for a course, an SEO course. And actually, I thought of you because on one of your episodes, you were talking about how you are kind of a course addict or something like that.
Yes.
And you sign up for a lot and then you don't always finish them right away. You take some time over the year. Yeah, so that's kind of what happened to me with the SEO class. I was so excited about it. And it was actually more of an expensive course than many that I have signed up for before. And I thought, it's expensive, and not, it wasn't over the top expensive, but a bit more.
Yeah.
And I'll do it because I'm spending this money. And
yes,
I still didn't do it. I was a little intimidated. And I think SEO is not really very intimidating. It's actually pretty simple when you set your mind to it. But for some reason, I just got overwhelmed by the course. And I haven't really, I have not delved into it yet.
Even still?
This SEO course that I did, it was less than a year ago. But I've done some work, but I've also gotten so busy.
Yeah.
So this is all to say that website, my standalone website, doesn't bring in as many sales as my Etsy shop does.
Okay.
It's more work, and I do have help though. My son, who is 16 years old, at first he was just helping with packaging and getting orders out, but I've taught him how to make the jewelry as well.
Nice.
It's really great. And I think he enjoys it. Sometimes it can be a little stressful, but for the most part, I think he really enjoys it.
Oh, that's nice. Yes. Do you feel, just having perused at least the course, and I'm sure, when you spend money on it, you did all your homework. Do you feel that if you do go through it, that it will be helpful to you in helping you to optimize your website and make it start bringing in traffic?
I do think so.
Okay.
And I, not only that, it will help me with and I tell my son this too, because I would really love for him I'd love to teach him what I learn in the course as well. any website in the future, and though SEO does change, it doesn't
Yeah.
stay the same, of course, yes, but there's a lot of sort of foundational stuff that I think would be
Yeah.
really, really helpful. And I'm really planning to do it. I just have to set aside some time.
I know, Ceci. I know the struggle. I
Yeah,
Yes. Don't be like me. I have a spreadsheet of all my courses, and I told
oh, that's
myself,
great.
you have to work your way through them. Some of them are not relevant anymore. Like I've moved on, but still,
Hmm.
it was money spent, and there's just something about wasting money that I cannot abide by.
Hmm. For
Yes.
sure. I know. And what I find, like this in this one, this SEO course is it's a large course. I think it was over a period of 12 weeks, maybe. I might be wrong on that. And I can share the name of the course too, if there's anybody out there who wants to do an SEO
Yes,
course.
please
Very
do.
thorough. So her name is Kate Toon, and that's Kate is her first name. Toon is Toon, and it's really, really very good. So I think the difference between this course and others that I've signed up for are that the other ones were more of kind of bite-sized courses. Like
Mm,
I did one on Pinterest years ago, one for, focusing on Pinterest, and I've done some with Instagram and things like that. And they were
yeah.
just like, this one was big. So, but the way that she breaks it down, Kate Toon, there are videos, and you're doing, first of all, you're not expected to stay at the same pace if you don't want to. Like, you can do things slower, and you have access to everything later on. And every
Hmm.
week there's one video that's focused on, and then there's, live calls with her. And she is in
Oh,
Australia
so it
though.
does have a live component. That's great. Mm,
Yeah, that was really good. And because of the time difference, though, she is in Australia. I did
mm,
miss, and of course there were replays, but I wasn't able to be on some of the lives because I think it was like 4 a.m. my time.
mm.
Because I'm on the East Coast in Vermont, United States. But yeah, great course. I would highly recommend it if anybody is looking for an SEO course.
And is it relevant for non-Shopify sites? So if someone has a website on Squarespace or WordPress, it will apply as well.
Yes, it's relevant for all those things, and I believe that Kate Toon works personally herself with WordPress. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But yes, it applies to pretty much any platform that you're using. I don't think there was anything that it wouldn't apply to.
Okay. The live component, was it just temporary, or even now they still have calls? So if someone were to join the course and make the time, they could still participate in the live sessions.
I do not believe that you can, once the course is over, you have access to the recordings, but I don't believe that you would
Okay.
have access to any new live sessions.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so I will look up the core. Actually, I did a quick search for it. It's the recipe for SEO success, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
And I'll link to it in the show notes so folks can easily go and check it out
Great.
and see if it's one for them. But yes, SEO is it's such a big thing, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, when you run your own website, it's a whole different animal.
It is. It really
Yeah,
is.
and you have to pay attention to it. Rarely, is does it organically grow and do its own thing. You just have to tend to it.
Yes. And, this was different in the past. I have had several websites over the years, and I remember with one, well, actually, all of the other websites I've had until most recently, they organically, I think there was just a lot less competition, and they just kind of
Mm,
organically would rank high on Google after a while, after I had
yeah,
been doing maybe for a year or so.
yeah.
And it's so different now. So
It's
much more
yep,
competition.
yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. It's a changing world.
Hmm.
Um, can we talk about your book? You are a published author, and not just that, but a best-selling one too. You have a book, Be Jewelry Making for Beginners: Step-by-Step Instructions for Beautiful Designs. It's been out since 2019 and is doing phenomenally well on Amazon. 4.5 out of 5 stars with over 1,000 ratings, and your book is number one for in beadwork, number two in jewelry crafts, and number six in gift decorating. How did this come about?
Mm-hmm. So interestingly, it was because of some Etsy posts that I had put up about, I, I was putting stuff up about beads, even though the part of my collection of my antique beads, even though I wasn't actually making bead jewelry at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a high school friend of mine who is an editor for the publishing company that published this book of mine, the book that I wrote,
Yeah.
had recommended me to one of their they were looking for writers, and the person in charge of I guess acquisitions for writers contacted me, and we did a couple of interviews, some video interviews together, and talked about it, and they decided they would like to work with me on this, and we came to an agreement, and that's how it all started.
How long did it take to write the book?
It was quite a short timeline.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to give me 6 weeks, which seems
Whoa.
almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I asked for maybe 2 extra weeks, so it wasn't more than 8 weeks of
Mm-hmm.
the time that and that included photographs, it included writing the book, it included creating the designs. They gave me some ideas of what they wanted and what type of jewelry, but there was a lot of legwork on my end because I had to actually learn many things to write the book, some of which I
Yeah.
didn't know, some techniques, and yeah.
Wow. So with the way it worked out, did they pay you to write the book and then they keep all the royalties, or do you share the royalties because, the book is in your name, and how does that work?
Yes. So this book I was paid for the book itself. Royalties are not involved, so I don't receive royalties. Um, and I'm working on a second book. I signed a contract with this publisher, giving them the right to look at a pitch for a second book before I can pitch it to another publisher. So it will be interesting to see what happens the second time around. I would prefer to have a different arrangement with royalties,
Yeah.
for sure. So yeah, I'm thinking about all that when in working on my second book, and we'll see what happens.
What if you decide to self-publish?
I would love to do something like, yeah, that's another thing I'm looking into, and it's all going to depend on kind of I'd like to pitch to a couple of publishers first, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at some who I feel might be interested. This will be a totally different topic, actually.
Yeah.
I have thought about doing another jewelry one, and who knows, that might happen in the future. This one will be more related to my health coaching business. And
Right.
but that's an idea also as well, is to do self-publishing. That would be very interesting. And I think for anybody who's writing a book or wants to write a book for the first time, being really niche and being really targeted with your topic, I would highly suggest taking that approach, because then you are quite a bit more likely to have success in
Mm-hmm.
self-publishing.
Yeah, that makes sense because I know sometimes it's so easy, especially with Amazon being the way it is, to just get lost in the in the sea of other books. But yeah, being writing about something that is very niche and you're an expert at, I think will help to give you more of a chance in the sea of all the information that's out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, you mentioned your health coaching. How did you get into health coaching, and what do you focus on?
I got into health coaching when I was dealing with some chronic illness symptoms myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized diet, and specifically eating raw vegan foods, basically a diet high in fruits and vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
raw fruits and vegetables, brought incredible results to me as far as minimizing and even completely getting rid of some of my symptoms and giving me so much more energy. And one of the things I was dealing with was some adrenal and fatigue issues, and the raw food just worked so well. And I had learned about this quite a long time ago. It's been about 17 years now. My mother had gotten sick, and she got really into raw foods. Uh, it was maybe 2.5 years ago. I had sort of lapsed in my diet, and I just wasn't taking as good care of myself. Um, my husband at the time had gotten very sick and actually passed away of cancer, and we were using food to help just with his symptoms and his energy levels and stuff. And so after this, there was kind of some time, a time where I just didn't care as much about food, and I then got more sick with chronic Lyme and mold illness and just all kinds of stuff. And after, I just got to a point where it was taking me about 3 hours to get out of bed. It was terrible, and just all kinds of issues. And I went to a raw food retreat, and after 18 days, I just felt so much better, like absolutely like night and day, and became really inspired to work with other people and to help them to realize the vitality that I discovered through the raw foods. And I focus on gut health. So people who are having, and many of us have digestion issues, and a lot of things sort of stem from that. So it made sense to me to focus on that. And that was where I found the success. And the first way of doing that was to look at what I was eating.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your husband. I don't want to overlook that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you think that the raw and vegan diet is for everyone, or it will be helpful to everyone, or do different situations call for different treatment modalities?
I think it wouldn't be, to be 100% raw for life wouldn't work for everybody. It is a very disciplined diet. And even myself, there've been times when I went through periods of doing all raw food and then adding in more cooked foods. And as far as, I do think it could be very, very helpful to anyone. However, so as far as the condition of the gut, that's kind of really important when someone's eating sort of the typical standard American diet. And then the next day they're going into all raw, they're going to have all kinds of symptoms, detox symptoms, and it can be very difficult, headaches and nausea, different things like this. So and I always advise people to start out slowly. Some people even say, I can't even eat fruit, or I can't eat raw vegetables, I can't digest them. And that makes a lot of sense, because it will cause bloating and all kinds of issues because of the way the gut microbiome is in a certain condition, based on maybe not having a lot of fiber, maybe overeating on sugars and a lot of fats, and very unhealthy or processed foods. So I think there's hope for everybody, though, with a slow. So I would say, taking a few months of slowly introducing more of the raw foods, and then later on, maybe adding more in.
If folks want to learn more about your health coaching and just get more tips on healthier eating habits from you, what's the best way they can get this information from you?
They can go to my Instagram or my YouTube. That's where I'm posting little videos and posts with recipes and just all kinds of inspiring information. And my name on both is the same. It's at Cecilia Leibovitz, and kind of a long spelling. So, but if you do a search, either maybe in your show notes, they can find these.
Yes, I definitely will include links to both, to everywhere that you can find Ceci, but I wanted to make sure you said it, so folks can start typing that in and go check that out. But I will have the links.
Great,
Ceci, you're welcome. What does a typical day look like for you? How do you manage your time across all the things that you're doing?
Hmm. I do a lot of self-care just
Mm.
because I want to remain healthy and energetic to be
Yeah.
able to do these things. And with some of the symptoms I've had in the past, it's important to do that. So I do, that is a priority for me. It also is, it's a little tricky to fit into the day
Yeah.
with the work as well. But I will wake up and I will make myself a juice or a smoothie. And I try to do a little bit of exercise in the morning, just a few minutes. I actually use a rebounder and it's about a 7-minute workout.
Oh, I've wanted
Mm.
a rebounder for the longest.
They're so great. I would
Yes.
really recommend trying that out. Yeah, getting one.
What
It's
brand did you get?
I wound up getting the NEEDAK, which is NEEDAK. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with that one.
No, I don't know that one.
There's another one I've heard of called Bellicon, BE.
Yes, I
You've
knew
heard of
that.
that
Yeah, yeah.
one? And that one looks so great, and I kind of wish I had gotten that one. But yeah, I like that. I think it doesn't have springs. It's like some kind of
Yes.
stretchy cords instead. Um,
Yes.
Yeah. So, and as far as the work, I'm a person who gets really inspired by what I want to do on that particular day.
Hmm.
So it can be a little tricky for me. I do try to keep things regimented and I do make lists so that I'll say, like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, and I'll put the priorities on my list.
Hmm.
I kind of need to do that in order to um, focus on what I need to be doing. My jewelry studio is a space that I use, which is right next door from where I live. So that's really great and really easy.
Hmm.
And I do delegate a lot to my son, and who is paid for his work, and
Yes.
he enjoys that. So
Yeah.
that's just fantastic because if I'm doing stuff with clients, I do have clients that come to see me in person as well as virtual clients for the gut health work.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm able to we have regular hours that Jasper, my son, can work on the jewelry, and I help him with that as well. But during the day, mostly I'm focusing on the health coaching business.
Oh, nice.
We kind of do that more in the evening, the jewelry stuff.
Yeah. So when it comes to the jewelry, um, do you mainly focus now on, I guess, quality control? So Jasper makes it, then you look over it and put finishing touches, or you just look to make sure it looks okay before shipping?
Yes, absolutely. I do a lot of quality control. Sometimes we'll work together if we have extra orders that week, where we'll both be working on pieces, or we
Yeah.
might have some people that I do sometimes offer, expedited orders depending on time and stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, but always quality control, and I'll write cards, thank you cards
Yeah.
for the clients, and I'll do the wrapping. He doesn't enjoy gift wrapping, so I do that part. But yeah,
Nice.
mhm.
Um, so because you do get a fair amount of orders from word of mouth, do you do much in the way of promotion and marketing to bring in traffic other than the word of mouth referrals that you get?
I don't so much anymore, although I do posts on social media from time
Okay.
to time on both Facebook and Instagram. But I also do use the Etsy ads,
Mhm.
on the platform ads. I know that when you're on Etsy, you're also automatically being the off platform ads are automatically
Yeah.
part of everything. Um, but yeah, so I'll do paid ads, and that helps. Actually, a certain percentage of the sales do come from the ads. Interestingly, though, I found that when I limited the products, I have less products on the ads now. It seems to work better somehow. I limited more to the ones that sell better.
Oh, okay. So you only promote your best sellers essentially.
Yeah, and also I should say that there were some different, and this is the reason why I'm not doing as much with the promotion. Aside from I have the other business as well, so not as
Hmm.
much time. But I've tried some of the same techniques that I used and the same methods that I've used for other businesses that worked really well. Namely, I did public relations for my handmade children's product business years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked really, really well. I mean, it got into magazines and different blogs. It was really great. And I tried that with this jewelry business, and it's so niche and so targeted and it's custom. It just didn't have the same appeal, even though the jewelry did wind up in several fashion magazines that are kind of really more about really just the stylists were just trying to find something kind of to go with the outfits and things like that. It wasn't really a focus on the product. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can buy this product at Cecilia Leibovitz. It was more of just like some mention in the magazine, but it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was successful for me with my other business, just didn't work for this one. So I'm still kind of, and that's why I signed up for the SEO class. I'm still trying to figure out sort of like what's the magic formula for this business, because it stays very steady with sales, but it's not like having exponential growth like some of the other businesses. Yeah.
And so even with exposure in publications, you're saying it didn't bring the boost that you might have expected that to bring?
Correct. Yeah. It didn't. In
Interesting.
fact, I don't even know really if it brought very many sales at all from what I could tell.
Perhaps the audience for those magazines were just not the right target for your jewelry. Have you ever done collaborations with other people who are in the wedding niche?
Yes, actually, I did some really fun collaborations with florists and other people. There's even one woman who has a business providing antique furniture for like weddings and photo shoots and things like that. Yeah, and makeup artist. We did a whole team of people, and it was really fun. And actually, I've been asked to do some as well. There was one that was done in England at one of William Morris's homes. Are you familiar with the old designer William Morris,
Yeah.
the arts and crafts time period? It was kind of like,
Oh, actually, no, I was thinking of the home builder, William Morris. I might be confused. No.
oh, okay. Well, it was fun. It's like a sort of a historical. He did a lot of almost. He was sort of like the Martha Stewart of his time, but in a very different way, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And so there was a sort of a museum, one of the homes that he lived in, I guess, and they do weddings there and all kinds of things. And there was a photo shoot there, which was great. I was asked to be part of, and
Nice.
I love that. I have several beautiful photos with models now because of those collaborations I took part in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you still do live fairs or craft fairs or vendor shows?
I haven't since the pandemic.
Yeah.
Haven't really done any at all. The last one I did was, I would say, maybe 3 or so years ago.
Okay. What was the reception like there?
Well, it was interesting. One of them was specifically for brides, and there was a lot of interest. And I would do a mailing list sign up where I would offer, somebody would win one of my necklaces. It was like a necklace made with antique lace.
Yeah.
And people really loved that. Like, oh, this is great. And they would sign up for the newsletter, and lots of people would be interested in the pieces. I don't think it really translated much into sales. But this is also a local event, so it's Vermont, and maybe different. There was a lot of sort of mainstream bridal booths at this particular event, and then there were other events I did geared toward. There were sort of artisan events, and what I've had rather than those, because those there was always something about them that sort of maybe was geared in such a way that it just didn't work with what I was offering.
Yeah.
But what has worked well is there are a couple of shops that I still provide jewelry to, and the jewelry sells really well in those shops. Interestingly, they're actually, one of them is a food co-op. So I don't know if where you live, do they have food co-ops there?
Yes.
And people like them. I mean, I even have health coaching clients who say, "Oh, I went to the food co-op and saw your necklaces, and I bought 2 of them." It's usually around the holidays people will buy them.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the other shop was also something that's very food related as well.
Interesting. Ceci, you know what all this tells me is try everything.
Yeah,
Because
I
you
agree.
just don't know. You just don't know
Yeah.
where that right customer will be.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Ceci, what would you say looking back over your entrepreneurial path are some of the things that you have done that you think set you up to be successful as a business owner?
Mm-hmm. Well, I read many, many books.
Mm.
In the beginning, when I started my very first business, that was actually back in 1994. It was a little paper mail order catalog selling natural baby products. And the first thing I did, and I learned about this probably through one of the books I read, I found out that SBA, the Small Business Administration,
Yeah,
yeah, and SCORE, which was SCORE. I don't
yeah,
remember what it stands for, but I think it's seniors or retired. Uh,
yeah. I know it's something to do with retired business owners or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so I found out that I could get information and I could even get some mentoring through those programs.
yeah,
And I signed up for one for a kind of a seminar that was sponsored by the SBA. And at that seminar, they had all these different, it was a full day event. I think it was like 5 or 6 hours. And they had all these different segments. You could learn about marketing, you could learn about design, you could learn about sort of like the typical, the needs for setting up a business, all the sort of back end stuff, like the paperwork kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
That was like the very first thing I did. And I learned so much from that. And it really, I think even to this day, I'm using information that I learned all those years ago, and then
Yeah,
the books, of course. And I signed up for some classes in college, marketing, and even like one that was sort of a PR class, actually. So I learned a little bit about PR, and those weren't my majors or anything. I never majored in business, but I just did, took some classes of interest.
yeah,
And then investing in certain classes and courses over the years too, I think really paid off. Also, um, learning and applying the idea that appearance as far as photos was very important, and that it was worth it to invest some money into a photographer, um, rather than, I started out doing my own photos, and I just saw such a difference when doing better quality, using better quality photos that were taken by a professional. So kind of realizing where some of the strengths, realizing the strengths that I do have, but also realizing that I can't do it all,
yeah,
and that it's okay to kind of, use outside help.
yeah.
Mhm.
So are all the pictures like in your Etsy shop and on cecileibovitz.com all professional product done by professional product photographer?
Pretty much. There may be
Oh
a
wow.
few little ones left over that I have had kind of the main photos are all professional, and almost all of the photos are professional. I think I may have
Okay.
only maybe a few, like two or three that I took myself.
How did you go about finding who to work with to do your product photography? And I know jewelry is very different too because you need it, sometimes it's hard to highlight the fine details when it comes to jewelry.
Yeah, it's really tricky, and it took a lot of searching. I mainly used Google, I think. I'm
Mm.
trying to remember if I ever got any. I don't believe I ever got any recommendations. I totally did it through Google, and I think, what I did too. I was looking at other jewelry designers and trying to see who, most of them wouldn't give away the name of their photographer. Um, but I think I found a couple where they showed who they were working with, and I
Okay.
actually didn't even wind up working with any of those. But I was able to look. I really think I found the person I ultimately worked with on Google, and I was also though able to look at all these different jewelry brands and decide which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, and sort of it helped me sort of refine my vision for what I was looking for,
Yeah.
and then keeping it simple, like finding I think jewelry photography, you can do the ones with sort of like lifestyle shots and all that, which is great for social media. But I think when you're doing photos for Etsy, it's really important to have those clear,
Yeah.
simple photos and someone who understands. how that works.
Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Hmm.
Ceci, what, if any, would you say are some hard lessons you've learned in this journey of running multiple businesses over the years?
Mm.
And how, what advice can you give to someone listening now so that they can avoid having to learn that lesson or those lessons themselves the hard way?
Hmm. Well, one of the things I did is I jumped into using a publicist for my jewelry business because I had had such success with the former business, the children's product business.
Oh yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was pretty expensive. And it didn't work. And so I wish that I had put a little bit more research time into how things are now with the market and just
Mm,
how things have changed and shifted over to internet. And I mean, obviously I knew that, but it was a process of learning through spending a lot of money that didn't pan out.
mm,
So that's one thing. Another thing is, like I said about the photographs, doing using professional photos from the start.
yeah.
Pricing is very important, and I always knew that. However, I did start out asking for a lot less for the products. I think it's really important to. I personally would rather be making less product at a higher ticket price
Oh,
than
yes.
to kind of, yeah, like the you can't. One thing I've learned is it's really not a good idea to compete on price ever, because
Yeah.
you're never going to win.
Yeah.
And being yourself, that is what is important. Your story and what makes you unique is what people are interested in. And obviously it goes without saying that you're making a quality product and you're doing something you want to be doing.
Mm,
But you got to let yourself shine through. That's my biggest piece of advice, and not worry about pricing, and also know that your work is worth what you're going to be asking for it. It's really easy to get burned out if you're not charging enough for your pieces, let alone also the fact that it won't be profitable.
yeah.
So I think that's really
Yes.
important.
Thank you. That's so important. I love it when my guests mention that, because I think with so much competition now out there on Etsy, I think people do panic and start racing to the bottom with their pricing, and that does and can backfire, because sometimes people, part of the judgment of the value of an item is the price, and sometimes if it's too low, it then it looks sketchy, like, okay,
Mhm.
why is it so cheap, you don't.
Yes.
Yes.
It absolutely, and I find myself, even as a buyer, like, of products, I do get suspicious sometimes when something's
Yeah.
too low in price.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I don't want to spend frivolously, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, why is it so cheap? Why is
Yeah,
everyone else charging X amount and this one is that? So, yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
there's some psychology to it too, which I think is frightening for especially new sellers, because, you just want to get that sale. You know, to, you just want your products to move, but then, yeah.
Right. Yes, and I found myself doing that too, where I would, another business I had, I would put things on sale all the time, and it was helping, with income, but it wasn't the same. People would get excited, oh, everything's on sale, but
Yeah.
it's not a really sustainable way to run a business, in my opinion, for
Yeah.
sure. Hmm.
Yes. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. What is your philosophy now on sales? Do you still believe that sale, do you still believe in running sales, or do you think people should just pay what it's worth?
For the most part, I don't really believe in running sales. I have had a sample sale once or twice a year, because
Hmm.
I'm always trying out new designs, or I have pieces that I used only for photographs that I
Mm,
wasn't selling, I wasn't planning to sell.
okay.
So sample sales, I think something like that is just fine. Another thing I do is use some of these pieces at the shops I mentioned, the local shops, and then I don't charge as much as I would online.
Yeah.
But I feel like if doing a sale for whatever reason, I mean, from time to time, I might do a special thing for the
Yeah.
holidays or something like that. But for the most part, I think it just really trains people to wait for the prices to go down.
Yes. Yes. I will raise my hand to that, Ceci, because there are some places, not so much individuals, but like, have you heard of Udemy?
That sounds really familiar, but I'm not sure
It's
if I
it's a
remember.
platform that they have all these courses, different courses that they
Mm,
sell, and even though right now I'm not spending on courses,
mhm.
lest anyone write and say stop it, I'm stopping myself. But what I used to do, and even in the future probably will still do, I'll confess. I know that, so there are courses. If you look at, if you go to the website the very first time and you look at the courses, because they have on just different topics, you'll see the prices are like, anywhere from 20 to, just under $100 for, the individual courses. So I figured out the system. So they have cookies, and the cookies, when you go to their site and then they see what you looked at and then you leave. So I will leave the site and then I wait a couple of days. Then they get me, I'll get an email or something. Or if I'm browsing on a website that shows ads, it will show me the ads for Udemy and say they're having, this sale now on this,
Mm.
on these courses that I looked at, and then they knock them down to like $18.99, and then I don't buy. And then a couple of days go by and then they're now $14.99 and I still don't buy. And then, a week or two goes by and then now it's $9.99. I'm like, yes, that's the one I was waiting for. And then I buy the
Wow.
course. So,
Yeah.
yes, all that to say, people, you can train people to wait for your lowest price, and that doesn't necessarily help your business. And I know, because that's what I do with Udemy. I don't do it with individuals so much, but like things like that where I know they're tracking me and they're watching me, well then, I make them pay.
Right, because it's more of a kind of, they're probably they're getting thousands and thousands of
Yes.
people, right?
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. I know I'm not the only one. They're doing this too. So I don't mind waiting till they reach rock bottom. And I know $9.99 is the lowest they will go.
Huh,
So
that's so interesting. Wow.
yeah.
I think it's like the opposite with, I notice something like airline tickets, you look and then they actually raise the prices. Mm.
Actually, no. It's so funny that you say that because I have a trip planned. Okay.
Mhm.
By the time this airs, this will have passed. But I have a trip planned in May,
Mhm.
and the ticket prices we bought, it's a family trip. So everyone was buying their tickets, and the people who bought the tickets earlier, when I went to buy our own tickets, the prices had fallen. Exact same flights, exact same itinerary. So they were able to go back to the airline and say, hey, today the price is this. Can you give me a credit? And the airline did credit them.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Huh.
yeah, I think it's unusual, but
Yeah.
something is going on with the airline industry. I don't
Huh.
know what.
Yeah, it seems like there have been a lot of changes with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Sorry. We digressed so far. um, Ceci, someone is listening now who is just starting out in business. What advice would you give to that person?
Hmm. I would advise that if they're doing, I'm assuming it's a product-based business,
Yes.
um, start out with something like Etsy so you can test the market.
Mm.
Give it your all, of course, do the best photos you can do. Even hire, I hired somebody, unless the person is graphic design inclined, I would hire someone to do some simple design stuff for you for the banner and
Mm.
a couple of other little touches you can do. Um, but keep it simple in the beginning, because you want to make sure that the product line that you do go with is going to be what you want to continue. You might have some shifts and some changes, and Etsy is just such a great platform to test what people's reception will be to this.
Yeah.
And then you can also, it's really a good idea, I would say, to tighten your niche, decide exactly who you want to attract. It can even be down to like the age of the person or a certain lifestyle. You can do brainstorms, and what I've found personally, and this may not be for everybody, but when I have personal interests and I decide that I want to do a business around them, I look at, we're not always going to be our customer, like, of course, for
Yes.
pricing and all that kind of stuff. You want to definitely charge the prices that you want to be, that you need to be charging, and that make it worth your while.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can sort of, if you're basing it on your own personal interest, that can help you to figure out who it is that you're looking for as a client.
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Now, we talked about some resources already in the course of our conversation, like the SEO course, and then, of course, your book, which will be great for anyone who wants to get into beaded jewelry making. But are there any other resources that you use in running your business that you found particularly helpful? And I will link to SBA and Score also, because you did mention those.
Right. Yeah. Now I'm going to be honest, like lately I don't use much because I've been doing it for I'm trying to, let's see.
You have all your systems in place, I'm sure. So it's
Yeah,
probably just running like a smooth machine at this point.
yeah. There at the same time, there is something I'll say. I have used to do a logo, and this was a real game changer for my business. I did. I invested, and now this is because it's a jewelry business and I'm doing packaging. That's a piece of advice I would really give, to put, if you have a jewelry business, put a lot of effort into your packaging, because it makes such a difference. The presentation, people, they actually, when they're doing reviews, they mention the packaging a lot. And even the tissue paper, there's a company, and I wish I had written all these names down, but I could always send them to you to put into the show notes.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's like a tissue paper that's custom made with my logo, and people love that. It just adds such a nice touch to the packages. And then I have these boxes that I've had printed out with a design I had done using the logo, which I had professionally designed. And I found a really great resource to have the logo done. It's kind of now a pretty popular site, and it's crazy that I don't remember the name of it, but I'm going to give it to you for the show notes.
Okay.
And I would really recommend a logo and packaging, and even doing that custom tissue paper if your product is really presentation dependent, or if it's a really gifty product.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that cliffhanger, Ceci. So go to convome.com. This is episode 364, and I will have the links to these resources. So if you want to check them out, if you want to use them to customize and brand your products, in the presentation, I will link to them once I get them. So by the time you hear this, they will be at convome.com. Just look up episode 364. Ceci, do you have an Etsy shop shout out?
I like Night Blooming. That's a hair care product business that has an Etsy shop, and it's all natural hair oils and shampoo and conditioners and henna for anybody who's interested in that sort of thing. I really like her product. She's actually a one-woman Etsy shop, or she has a main website too, but she is a one-woman business.
And it's NIGHT, Night Blooming, not
Yes.
KNI. Okay.
Yes, with an N.
Okay.
Another one that I really like is called Linen Studio RG. The initials RG, like Roger and grapes.
Okay.
Linen Studio RG. And she makes really beautiful linen bedding, if you're looking for natural fiber bedding, and does really nice stuff. And think she even does some custom work, but she's got some really beautiful like standard items that she sells, but they're all made, everything made by hand, like
Okay.
the old days of Etsy.
Yeah.
And then for jewelry artists, laser beams, which is not, it's not a full word laser, but it's LZR beams, BEAMS, laser
Okay.
beams.
Mm-hmm.
She makes jewelry stands, and she does uses laser printing to kind of put people's logos and other types of things into the pieces.
Oh,
So
nice.
if you do a lot of craft shows, that she's got several different items that can be used for craft shows or other places where you need jewelry stands.
Okay, so she's like a seller for sellers.
Yes.
Oh,
hmm
cool. Okay.
And I think I had one more, which is kind of fun. I think she pronounces it powder rose. It's spelled I think she's in Italy, actually. POUDREROSE.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, and she makes really pretty little like textile jewelry pieces and decorative dolls and things like that, and ceramics as well. I follow
Interesting.
her on Instagram. Yeah, and I've also purchased some things from her Etsy shop. It's really fun.
Nice. Okay, so I have Night Blooming, Linen Studio RG, Laser Beams, and Powder Rose.
hmm
Love it. I will have links. So I'll grab the links to all their stores. I will put them in the show notes for this episode. Please go check out their stores. Look at what they have. Buy something from them. Let them know that Ceci sent you, or that you heard about them through in the course of our conversation on the podcast. And let's just help support other sellers. Thanks, Ceci. Those are good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What's the best way folks can connect with you if they want to reach out and follow up with you or just say hi?
I'm really active on Instagram, so that's a good way. They're also always, of course, welcome to email me, and they can email me through my website.
Through the contact box or direct email?
Or they can just email. They can do it either way. So they can do it through
Okay.
the contact box, or they
Okay.
can email me. It's Cecilia.Leibovitz@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. And of course, I will have links to everywhere that you can find Ceci on the internets. Please do check her out. Ceci, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast and for just sharing your journey and for finally us having this conversation.
Yes, it was my pleasure, and thank you, Ijama. I really, really enjoyed our time together.
I have too. And thanks again for the coffees. I haven't forgotten.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that you do that. I think that's great.
Thank you so much. And I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast and for joining us in this conversation. I will be back with another one next time. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please reach out to me. You can connect with me on Instagram at Etsy Conversations, or you can go to convome.com and click on Be My Guest. I will be happy to have you. And I will be back with another episode next time.